Foreign Service Association, AFSA. AFSA represents 30,000 members of the Foreign Service, active duty and retired, from the State Department, from USAID, from the Commerce Department, USDA, and the Voice of America. Most of our Foreign Service colleagues are today at their posts overseas serving our country, and we are very proud to represent them. I'm joined here with two of our vice presidents, Matthew Asada from the State Department, Sharon Wayne from USAID. We have Steve Morrison, our vice president from Commerce, here today as well. Thank you, Steve. And we also are working together with the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, which represents our civil service colleagues. Friends, we're here today because we woke up in the morning to find ourselves once again in Groundhog's Day. Congress unable to reach an agreement on the basic question of funding the government. Hundreds of thousands of U.S. federal employees may be prevented next week from coming to work and doing their jobs. A government shutdown would take an enormous toll on all federal employees, their families, and those they proudly serve, the American people. We also want to remind our elected representatives in Congress of an additional fact. Thousands of Foreign Service and Civil Service employees, diplomats, development experts, people who work every day to protect our country and to promote its interests. Many of these people here in Washington and overseas will be prevented from doing their jobs in a shutdown. So we want to speak out about the work they do in the areas of diplomacy and development, work which contributes to the national security and prosperity of our country every day. So think about this. In this time of continuing instability throughout the Middle East, things that we're seeing every day on the news in Egypt, in Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, terrorist attacks in Kenya, natural disasters in Mexico. At uncertain times like these, we appeal to the members of Congress to allow our capable men and women of the Foreign Service to do their jobs overseas on behalf of the U.S. Friends, we know the impact a government shutdown would have, and it is not limited to inside the U.S. The Foreign Service knows how the world community perceives us, and how this inability to reach basic funding questions about our government damages the U.S. overseas. We know that in order to be leaders overseas, we must show leadership at home, and so we ask Congress to show that leadership today. And do not shut down diplomacy. Thank you. And let me introduce Matthew Asada.
Thanks, Bob. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Matthew Asada, and I'm the AFSA State Vice President. I represent my fellow Foreign Service colleagues at the Department of State. I'm so pleased to be here today to be their voice. As we speak, the Department's Foreign Service and Civil Service employees and locally employed staff are serving at Department of State facilities here in the United States and at more than 275 locations around the world. These public servants, many of them far removed from Washington, are dedicated professionals who want nothing more than to do their jobs and serve the American people. More than 10% of these individuals are serving far from home and without their families, their husbands, their wives, their partners, their children. We owe it to them to speak up and let Congress know that we want to serve. The Foreign Service works for you, the American people, day in and day out. When a consular officer issues a visa to a student looking to study in the United States, she creates a job back in Detroit, Michigan, a city that so sorely needs it. When her colleague assists an American citizen who loses his passport at the Oktoberfest in Germany, the American citizen is able to get the care and assistance that the person needs to return home. When an economic officer meets with an American business from the Midwest to explain the economic opportunities in India. That Midwestern company is able to increase production at their facility back in Wisconsin. And when our public affairs colleagues are able to identify rising new leaders across the Middle East and bring them to California to learn more about our country and our people, they've planted the seeds of understanding for generations to come. And when our political officers are able to bring two parties to a conflict together peacefully and end hostilities, they spare the world of more bloodshed. And it takes a team of foreign service, civil service, and our locally employed staff to make this all happen. I know from personal experience that foreign service officers like myself, our country's diplomats, are in the field in places like Kunduz, Afghanistan, working shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and sisters in the military to bring stability to places where it is lacking. The world does not stop, and neither can we. America, the great country that it is, must continue to engage with the world, whether it is the conflict in Syria, Iran's recent overtures at the United Nations, a horrific mass shooting in Nairobi, an earthquake in Pakistan. The United States must be ready to respond and engage through its robust diplomacy. In a 24/7 world, the United States must go on. We call on Congress to fulfill its constitutional duty to pass a budget and fund the government. Diplomacy cannot stop, will not stop, and we must be there at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm Sharon Wayne, the Vice President for AFSA, representing USAID. It's great to see everybody out here today. I'm honored to be here representing the Foreign Service Officers of the U.S. Agency for International Development and to stand in support of both the Foreign Service and the civil service employees of all the agencies represented by AFSA and AFGI, using less than 1/2% of this nation's budget. USAID's Foreign Service Officers strive to bring dignity and that all-powerful emotion of hope. Hope for a better future to those struggling around the world. While furthering America's foreign policy interest and working toward a more stable and secure world for us all, our Foreign Service Officers reach out to those in developing countries who need and want some help from a friend. By the very nature of its mission, USAID attracts some of the most altruistic and unselfish individuals from all across this great country. Many of its officers left much higher paying jobs to join USAID because they believe so strongly in the work they do and the value of being the face of the United States abroad, demonstrating the best that our country has to offer. That is working together and caring about our fellow man. The committed Foreign Service Officers who work for USAID in all parts of the globe help to bring food security to the 1 billion people around the globe who go to bed hungry every night. They help improve education and healthcare, support democracy, and they provide life-saving humanitarian assistance in the times of greatest need. But this work isn't just about helping communities overseas. USAID projects build strong partnerships. They support global stability and develop markets for American goods. The impact of this work is clear. It contributes to our safety and our economy here at home. The work is not easy, but these committed federal employees take on these challenges daily. We expect no less from our leaders. This looming government shutdown lends itself toward instilling demoralization and uncertainty in our federal employees. We urge Congress to work together to prevent a government shutdown. The threat of shutting down the government and giving the perception of faithful federal employees being used as pawns in a political showdown should not be an option. Toying with our peace of mind as we worry whether or not we'll get a paycheck and be able to pay the bills should not be an option. Stopping the vital service U.S. aid officers provide for this country and the world should not be an option. And neither should denying us our dignity and passion to do the work we feel called to do. We are public servants, and we want to serve. Let's get some energy going here. Say it with me 3 times. We want to serve. We want to serve. We want to serve. All right.